with you. But either way, the chat is also open. Feel free to ask any question. Just ring the bell if something is not really clear. So, and then let's just get going. My name is Erik. If you have any question, you can address it directly to me, to Erik. Dita is typing in the background. She's doing the technical stuff, trying to help you out with any questions. Her name is Dita. So D-I-T-T-A. Basically, if you have a question for Dita, feel free to put something in the chat. She's more than willing to help out. Now, we're basically using this book, which is called Dianetics, and that is an international bestseller on the mind. It is unlike any other self-help book that's on the market. There's plenty of self-help books, and most of those self-help books will try to motivate you to stay positive, to set goals, to think in futures. And they might try to convince you to stay away from the negative. Well, that's the whole point. What do you do when things turn sour? And when you start to feel that, you're getting depressed, you're getting stressed, you're getting anxious, something is not really working in your life, and something is holding you back. Well, the solution to that is actually in Dianetics. And it's called the modern science of mental health. Now, science basically means let's say a body of data that you can use to make predictions and to get results. Let's just keep that very, very simple. Now, since some of you guys are new, I just want to start with a quick demonstration. And that is just this. What I want you to do quickly is see if you can remember primary school. That is just a question here. See if you can remember primary school. And maybe you can remember the playground or the school building, or one of the classrooms, or maybe you get a picture of the teacher again. But just see if you get anything. If I would ask you, can you remember anything of primary school? Do you get some pictures? That is the main question. Do you see some pictures flashing by of the building, the playground, one of the teachers, maybe the whiteboard, the green board, the blackboard? Just put something in the chat, please, and let me know that you actually get some pictures. Did you see some pictures here? That's the first question to you. All right, in the meantime, Anita Hemmings says, good evening, everyone. This is Anita Hemmings from West Midlands, UK. Yeah, this is what we normally do, guys. We normally do like a brief introduction. Everybody introduces himself. So we're going to skip that tonight because we have a lot to do. Okay, so in the meantime, did anybody get some pictures? If I would say, think of a pet that you owned, like a cat or a dog or a parrot or a hamster. Yeah. Do you actually get a picture of that? Very key to warm up tonight. So please use the chat, put something in there, yes, no, and we can see that you're tracking, and we can actually move on, because these are just the fundamentals to get going tonight. All right, good. Yes, yes, yes. All right, great. So how would we sketch that? Well, your mind is simply, you could say, something that makes pictures. That is what your mind does. Let's say that's your body. And that will be your mind. In time, it makes pictures. It's like a long footage, like comparable to, let's say, the footage that you would see from a Hollywood movie, like a film that we had in the old days, back in the analog cameras, that kind of a footage. However, in your case, in our case, our mind actually makes 3D pictures. It makes three-dimensional pictures. Good. So what we see then is that we have memories here. We have memories here and we have experiences. So all these memories and experiences, they've actually been recorded. All right, now what we're gonna cover tonight is what is that thing that is actually pulling you down? What is that mechanism in the mind that makes you feel that you're not yourself, that you're not comfortable, that you're stressed, that you're nervous, that you feel that you have limited potential, that you can't seem to be what you want to be, that you can't seem to do what you want to do, that you can't seem to have what you want to have? What is it that makes that happen? And in order to get there, we're actually going to clear up a couple of key words. And the interesting part is, if you would open the book, for the book owners, in the beginning of the book, there's a thing called a synopsis, which is like a brief summary. It's just a couple of pages. And everything that I'm going to cover with you tonight is actually from that synopsis. Yeah? Synopsis basically means a brief summary. So, the first thing that I want to share with you is the word aberration. The word aberration, if you have that detail. And you can put it on the screen right now. All right, good. So here's the definition. Aberration. It comes from Latin ab, meaning away, and errare, like making errors. And the definition of that is any deviation or a departure from rationality. That is the definition of an aberration. It is actually something that comes out of the industry of lenses. Yeah? When you produce lenses for cameras, you can see that lenses can be divergent, they can be convergent, and they can actually change images. Yeah, like when you're in front of a funny mirror, you may look wider, for example, or you may look taller, and that would be an aberration. See something differently. So in this case, when a person has an aberration, you would say there is some irrational behavior in that individual. So aberration means any deviation or departure from rationality, meaning any and all irrational behavior. So what would we mean by irrational? Well, like I just said, if you feel that there's something that you desire, that you would like to have, to possess, to own, but you have the idea that would never be possible for you, or that you would really like to be able to do something, but you have the thought that you could never do that. You could never achieve this. Now you actually want to be somebody, but you cannot be yourself. Now all that is irrational behavior. And it's coming from somewhere. It's coming from somewhere. There's something there that makes that happen that we're going to have a look at tonight. So the definition basically means to err, to make mistakes, more specifically to have fixed ideas which are not true. We went over that last week, so we're not going to go deeper into that. I just wanted to bring it up again tonight. Now, the next thing that we're going to cover is the source of aberration. That is the next quote. What is the source of aberration? And there it is. The source of aberration has been found to be a hitherto unsuspected sub-mind. A sub-mind. In other words, sub, that actually means something that's lower or below. You could say the person, let's call it the I, or let's call it the awareness, has a mind somewhere below his awareness, a sub-mind. Something there below his awareness. The source of aberration, in other words, the yeah, let me just finish that line. The source of aberration has been found to be a hitherto unsuspected submind. In other words, the cause, we just replaced the word source. Source means where does something originate from? Where does something come from? We change that word for cause. What causes something to happen? We change the word aberration for any and all irrational behavior. So in other words, the cause of any and all irrational behavior, any and all that limits your potential, that limits your survival, that makes your life unnecessarily difficult, has been found to be a hitherto unsuspected submind. Okay? We're going to go on. And we're going to get that next definition of submind. Submind with 1, 2, 3, Adita. There it is. So here it says, this submind is complete with its own recordings. It does not receive its recordings as memory or experience. And we're just going to draw this out on the whiteboard in a second. So it does not receive its recordings as memory or experience, but only as forces to be reactivated. And in this book, in Dianetics, this submind is called the reactive mind. Okay? Now, let's do some sketching here. So imagine Joe is he's walking along the street in that direction. Here's Joe, and while he is walking, he notices a house, and he notices a tree, and he notices a car. He's moving along in that direction. While he's moving along, he's actually making recordings in his mind. He has himself walking in the street. He's just making pictures of that. He's making pictures of the house. He's making pictures of the tree. He's making pictures of the car. He's just recording all that. Let's say an everyday kind of example. Let's say you come home and you got your keys, and you just drop your keys on the table, right? You make a picture of it. Maybe 2 hours later, you're somewhere in your house and you realize you have to actually maybe do some grocery shopping. You put your hands in your pockets, oh, where's my keys? And you realize your keys are not there. So what are you going to do? You're going to look at those pictures, and then your mind will tell you, oh, hang on, I got home, I put the keys on the dresser. So now your mind will tell you where you can actually find the keys. That's how it works. So in this way, Joe is actually making these recordings of what he's seeing over there. Now, what is happening here? Let's say at this moment here, he gets hit by the car. He gets hit by the car, and the analytical mind which is recording memories and experiences, that's the analytical mind. It simply analyzes data. That's what it does. So let's say at that point he gets hit by the car, right? The car drives over him, so to speak, for example. And all of a sudden you can imagine these recordings are going to stop very abruptly. It's going to stop right there the moment that he's hit. Now, what happens here is that Joe goes unconscious. Now, apparently, something is still recording this whole period when Joe is unconscious. So let's say his conscious level is just dropping in an instant, dramatically. At some point, he'll wake up again, and he might actually find that he's now in a hospital. And he starts recording these pictures again. Now, in the meantime, whatever happened over there was recorded as well. It was recorded as well. And this is that particular sub-mind that took over the recording while Joe went unconscious. Joe went unconscious, the sub-mind kicked in and started to record, and then the analytical mind took over again the moment he came back to his consciousness. So let's go back to that definition again. Help me out, Dita, if you will, the sub-mind. So this sub-mind here is complete with its own recordings. It does not receive its recordings as memory or as experience, but only as forces to be reactivated. Now, imagine here, at that point of collision, he was hit by a certain force. He was overrun by a car. So there is force in the incident. And that force has been registered. That force has been recorded. So this submind in Dianetics, it has gotten the name reactive mind. Reactive mind because it reacts, as we are about to see in a couple of minutes. All right, so give me a yes or no. Are you tracking so far? Are you tracking so far? Does it make some sense to you? Right, Kieran? I know, that was already earlier. All right, Anita says, all right, I believe so. Kieran, 100%. Yeah, no doubt. I know you do. Anybody else? You guys tracking? Just conceptually, we're gonna go deeper into it. But that, you know, you're making pictures all the time. You're making recordings of your memories, what you've seen, what you've observed. And then when you go unconscious, well, obviously you stop making those type of recordings, right? Okay, good. Well, I'm happy with this. Let's just continue. We're gonna go to the next picture. That is this submind is called reactive mind. All right. So how is it defined? It's further defined as it does not remember. In other words, there is a part of your mind that has memories. Make it very simple. Let's say you know where your remote control is. You know where you put your bike. You know where you have the cutlery, right? You know where you keep your plates and your cups. You know where you have your tea bags. It's all in your analytical mind. Whenever you want to make a cup of tea, you know that you're not supposed to go to the shed, but you know that you have to go to the kitchen. Your mind will tell you where to go. That is because you have these pictures. So now, there's a part of your mind that records during moments of pain and unconsciousness. And what does this thing do? It does not remember. It records whatever is happening there, and it uses these recordings only to produce action. Furthermore, it does not think. It selects recordings and then impinges them upon the individual, which we call the conscious mind, and the body without knowledge or consent of the individual. All right, let me give you a practical example. Maybe at some point you had to do a speech in school or in front of a group of people at work, right? And you got nervous. You got nervous and you felt that your legs were shaking. Maybe you had a piece of paper, maybe you want to say what was ever on the paper, and you tried to keep that paper very still, but you couldn't. You couldn't keep it still. And now you noticed that you had a dry throat, and you felt very, very thirsty. Maybe you started to transpire and smell. And you had this idea that you had to run for the toilet because you felt like you had to pee like crazy. And then you thought that whatever you were going to say, you had it memorized. And all of a sudden you realized you didn't really know what to talk about. So what is happening there is that submind actually went into action. We look at the top line again. It says it records, and it uses the recordings only to produce action. So there's some kind of a force in there that can be reactivated upon the individual. It doesn't think. It selects recordings and impinges them upon the conscious mind of the individual. In other words, it doesn't really have access anymore to his memories. It simply impinges upon the conscious mind of the individual and his body without his knowledge or consent. Maybe I should just do another sketch for you here. Okay, so let's say we got Joe here, That's Joe, his analytical mind. And then also in time, at some point, he had some surgery, or he had something traumatic that he experienced, which is just there. It's not really clear to him what really happened there. That thing actually has force. So Joe, for example, he walks into a dentist office or a hospital. He looks at that, and all of a sudden something kicks in. That force all of a sudden kicks in, and now he feels nervous. Now he feels afraid. Now he feels he's no longer himself. Now his mind is somewhere else. And if we just look at that definition again, which is that well, I can just, well, there we go. Just look at the definition again, the bottom line, it says, it selects recordings there and impinges them upon the conscious mind, the individual. You could say the awareness. Or the I, the individual himself, and the body, without knowledge or consent of the individual. In other words, he's completely overwhelmed by something that controls him, that he feels he cannot shake. He can't get rid of it. He can't control it back. Okay, we're going to go to the next definition. Which is Angram's definition 1. You have it. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. That's very good. All right, good. So I'm just repeating the first sentence again. It does not receive its recordings as memory or experience, but only as forces to be reactivated. We just saw that. It receives its recordings as cellular, meaning having to do with your organs and cells, engrams. When the conscious mind, the individual, is unconscious. So what is an engram? An engram, basically, the definition you'll find below, en meaning in, grave as in carve, to carve in, just like an LP record. You got this LP record of plastic, and there's grooves carved into that plastic. Likewise, we have recordings which are recorded in the reactive mind like a carving. Something seems to be carved in. And now, as a funny analogy with this LP record, sometimes you would see people and say, oh my God, here we go again. It's the same song all over again. It's just as if you put the needle on the record and he actually starts to play the song. He actually starts to play the whole drama once again. You've probably seen that with people. They have a certain dramatization. All of a sudden it turns on and the whole thing just plays out as a song on a record. It's like that whatever was engraved there is actually exposing itself right now. Okay? So, and I could, of course, give you a picture, the picture of the hospital data, and yeah, that makes it a bit clearer. Yeah, here we have somebody who's in the on the operation table, in the operation room. Of course, at that point, all kinds of things are happening to the individual. He's receiving surgery. They're going to cut into his flesh, do all kinds of funny thing. But at that time, the awareness is very low, as you can imagine, right? The awareness is kind of like canceled, so to speak. So the person who is unconscious will not have any memories of such a circumstance. But he will have a recording, something engraved in his system. Yeah? And that is what we would call an engram. Now, an engram would be a certain period of time. It would have a beginning, it would have an end. Right? So let's say the person is receiving his anesthesia and just goes knocked out. That's where the engram starts. Up till the moment that he basically comes to again. He wakes up again. That's when the engram ends. So an engram is a moment, a certain time period when the person is unconscious and being exposed to a certain force, yeah, which happens to be painful. All right, so we're going to do another definition again to make this even more clear. And that is, there we have it, an engram. That is a moment when the analytical mind, the individual, so that's the analytical mind. You can imagine the person who was researching this, he went through quite something in order to uncover the whole mystery, right? If you look at, for example, psychology books, you got all these definitions, but in the end, you'll ask yourself, okay, is this workable? Can you do something with this? Does it make people better? Does it raise IQ? Do you actually get the individual in a better condition? And all these things failed. Dianetics was actually the first method that really worked. The discovery was complete. And with that, for the first time in history, you could predictably raise IQ, increase confidence, make a person more competent, and help him to reach his full potential. So, let's say the awareness, the consciousness is just doing a sudden drop. Yeah, that's what we mean here by the definition. I'll just read it for you. An engram is a moment when the consciousness, the awareness, the individual is shut down by physical pain, drugs, or any other means, and that submind, that reactive mind, is open to record that whole period. So once again, let me see if we can sketch that out for you. But I think you probably have the picture by now. Let's say you are fully conscious. fully conscious, and you're recording all these pictures. Then all of a sudden you're knocked out by drugs or by a sudden pain. It can be something small even. Just imagine what happened to you when you were a kid. You maybe you put your fingers in the wrong place, right? Like in a door, in a doorpost in the opening, and you had the door shut on your fingers. That was an intense pain, you know, a shocking pain, all of a sudden. And at that very moment, and just a few moments thereafter, you were less aware of the environment around you. Maybe you had no clue, you were not cognizant of the fact that the stove was on, and inadvertently, you put your hand on the stove. And you just felt this excruciating pain of burning your hand. And in that very moment, and maybe even a little bit longer, you were less aware of what was happening around you. Yeah, so that awareness can actually fluctuate, can go on a scale. Now, if you imagine if you receive a sudden blow, which is profound enough to completely knock you out, that's what they do on the surgery room or by certain street drugs or what have you, then your awareness just plummets, and you can actually go completely unconscious. You go completely unconscious, and here you have a painful, or you could also say a forceful content. Up till the moment that you wake up again, and you start to record your pictures again. All right? So during such a moment, you would have what the book calls an engram, something written in your system that you have no consciousness about. It is a recording. It's a recording, but it isn't a memory, unlike these. These are memories. The memories you can pick up again. Where did I put my keys? Where's my favorite mug? Where did I put the remote control? That's in your memories. You have an engram sitting there that you don't know anything about. However, it has a force and it can affect you. Good. So now we go to the next definition, which is engram activation. All right, Debs, gotta jump out. Thank you so much. Yes, you're most welcome. So when any such recording in engram becomes reactivated, it has command power. It shuts down the individual to a greater or lesser degree, and it takes over the motor controls of the body, and it causes behavior and action to which the individual, the conscious mind, would never consent. He's nevertheless handled like a marionette by his engrams. Have you ever had that feeling like, gosh, why did I just do that? That wasn't me at all. I wasn't myself. That is exactly that. Somebody else, something else gets reactivated and takes over the control. So then what does it do? Let me just turn the board. So let's say this is an engram. We're just drawing it here. It could also be there in the body, just for sketching purposes. Let's say that thing gets reactivated. It starts to take over the control of the body. It shuts down the mind. And it causes a certain behavior. So, let's say it gets reactivated during an exam. All of a sudden, you don't know what to answer anymore. Whatever you learned seems to be blank, seems to be gone, inaccessible. You feel tense, you feel nervous, you start to transpire. Maybe you feel like you don't want to be there, you want to go somewhere else. That is basically what is happening. All right, so now, can it get worse? Yes, it can. We're just getting started. So now we go to engrams and language. All right. So, the engrams containing language impinge themselves upon the conscious mind, the individual himself, as commands. Right. How would that work? Let's say, simple thing, person is on the operation table again. That's him. That's the bed. Two surgeons over there. One is asking the other, how's your wife? The other one says, I can't trust my wife anymore. Is now part of that submind, that reactive mind, the engram. Okay, so our patient here, Joe, has got the engram. It's got the recording somewhere, and it has these words. Remember, the recording also has force. So this is now part of the full package of his mind. He's sitting there at home later, week later, month later, whatever. He looks at the clock. He said, gosh, it's already 11 o'clock. My wife is still not home. He thinks of his wife. His wife is supposed to be home before 11, and he notices that his wife isn't home. What can happen right now? That moment, all of a sudden kicks in, and Joe gets the idea that he cannot trust his wife. He has an adorable wife. She's always been faithful to him. She never betrayed him in any way. But Joe, he can't get that idea out of his mind that all of a sudden he doesn't trust her. That thing, that engram, that submind, motor controls his body, and he starts pacing. And he gets very restless. And he gets agitated. He may actually feel like he's getting angry and he wants to throw with things. So it changes his mood, it changes his body behavior, and he completely forgets the analytical recordings that he actually never ever had any problems before with his wife. In other words, here we see an aberration, an irrational behavior. All right, we're going to go to picture 21, Angram's only cause of aberration. Okay, so there it says, the Angram, and only the Angram causes aberration and psychosomatic illness. What we went over last week in part 1 was that more than 70% of all the illnesses that mankind has is psychosomatic. The Angram kicks in, the body goes out of balance. The Angram doesn't kick out again, the body remains out of balance. Over time, short or long duration, the person gets sick, he gets ill, he has all kinds of problems. It's actually just that force upon the body throws the body out of balance, and now he's no longer healthy. So the Angram, that small period in time when he was exposed to certain forces, unconsciousness, that is actually what causes the aberration, which is the totality of irrational behavior. Good. So now let's go on to the next quote, the reactive mind summary. All right, so if we want to sketch it, so an Angram could be something like an operation, but birth is also an Angram. If you're in your mother's womb, and your mother, let's say, hurts herself by bumping into the table and denting your skull as a baby, then you receive an Angram. And it is, I don't recall by heart, but like every individual has got a couple of thousand of Angrams. That's what it says in the book. So the reactive mind is the totality of all your Angrams. And it operates exclusively on physical pain and painful emotion. It is not capable of differentiative thought. In other words, it cannot differentiate. It would say that things are the same, as we're about to see in one of the final examples before we end off. So, but it cannot differentiate. And it acts on a stimulus-response basis. For example, you look at your boss, but you conceive of your boss as perhaps a bit of a dangerous individual who could just fire you at any given time. And you can't differentiate. You say, well, that is the fact. Or you've been bitten by a dog, and now you can no longer differentiate because you say, well, you got to be careful with dogs because dogs just bite. You can no longer differentiate between sweet dogs and ferocious dogs and what have you, right? That is the reactive mind. It cannot differentiate. All right, so I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that you hypnotize an individual. And you tell the individual that every time he sees a tie, he will feel very upset. So, that is an Angram. He's actually unconscious. He's not really receiving pain here, but he went unconscious. So he's making a recording instead of making a memory. And he has a recording there that has a verbal content. So, and that verbal content is that he will feel very upset every time he sees a tie. All right? So now, that hypnotic suggestion is not revealed to him, and he's let go into society, and maybe he's just walking down the street and he feels in a good mood, and just somewhere in the corner of his eyes, he sees a guy with a tie, and his mood changes. The anger kicks in, the hypnotic suggestion kicks in, and all of a sudden he's got this feeling that he feels upset somehow. He doesn't like the environment like he liked it before, and maybe he starts to criticize the people in the environment. There's definitely something wrong with the environment. He can't really pinpoint it. Now, the lack of differentiation is that the tie is usually worn with suits, or is perhaps worn with shirts, or is perhaps worn by men. So now this reactive mind says, well, a tie is like a shirt, is like a suit, is like a man. And it might actually spin completely out of control, where a person is just walking down the street, and rather than just seeing a tie, he sees guys with shirts and suits, and he doesn't like that. And he feels upset about it. That's how that reactive mind actually works. It just produces aberrations and irrationality. All right, now I want to basically ask you a few questions right now. I've been talking a lot. I've not been giving you any opportunity to give me some feedback. So I have a couple of questions here for you. Have you noticed any of these following situations in your life? You have that for me, Dita. Picture, noticed any of this in your life? Okay, guys, so here's a question, a direct question to you. So have you ever noticed one of the following situations? If you want to use the chat, it will be good to see to which number you can relate. So maybe you just want to put in the chat 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, or perhaps all of them, or perhaps 1 and 2. That's the idea. So have you ever noticed one of the following situations? Certain people make you feel uncomfortable, like a team leader, like a boss, like a client, like a neighbor, like, well, whoever. Somebody making you feel uncomfortable, like you cannot really be yourself in that person's space. Or have you seen number 2, that certain locations and spaces make you feel uncomfortable, like a dentist place or a hospital, or I remember even fainting in a when I went to the vet many years ago with my cat. It made me feel very uncomfortable, up to the point where I even fainted. Maybe you don't want to sit in the boss's office, right? So any locations or spaces that make you feel uncomfortable. All right. Number 3, do you have any behaviors? Do you have certain behaviors that you don't understand and that don't make sense to you? You don't have to tell what it is. Yeah, but if you feel that you're doing something that isn't really you, and you don't understand why you're doing that, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Can you relate to this? That you have certain behaviors that you don't understand. And number 4, do you have certain body issues that the doctors can't explain? All right, guys. So, love to have a little bit of your feedback now. Maybe you want to pop something in the chat, like number 1, 2, 3, or 4. So we have Anita, Karina, Joseph. Right, Joseph, you were here last night. Vaish. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Vaish. Vaish. It's a cool name. All right, Kieran says number 2. Right, Anita says number 1. Good. So basically that is coming from engrams. In other words, the engram and the engram only, your reactive mind and the content of your reactive mind only makes this happen. Makes it happen that certain people make you feel uncomfortable, that you feel that you cannot deal with them. For certain spaces, you cannot deal with that. Certain behaviors that you cannot shake or put under your control. Certain body issues. Okay, Joseph, number 3. All right, good. So I hope I made this clear that the remedy here is to get rid of your engrams. That is the whole trick in Dianetics. It is so revolutionary that actually it tells you how you can completely rid yourself of these engrams, of that submind, that reactive mind. It has no value because there's something there that controls you, that makes you do something that isn't you, that shuts your analytical mind, your memories. In other words, it is detrimental to your survival. Dianetics is the only thing that actually helps you to get rid of the reactive mind. Next week we're going to go into that, how you do that. But basically, if you get rid of it, you will be a clear individual. You will think clearly. You will think really fast. You will not feel these inhibitions, compulsions, which are coming from your reactive mind. Now, in case that you do want to know more, I strongly recommend that you actually read this book. Reading this book, actually tonight we just did some snippets. Reading this book will give you the complete explanation of your mind, how it works, what's holding you back, how to fix that. And so I'm just going to put a link for the book in the chat, as well as an online course that you could do in order to help you to get the full understanding of the subject matter. The link is just going to pop up in a second. The book, for your understanding, is only 20 euros. It's a no-brainer. Imagine that for 20 euros you can dramatically change your life for the better. In case you want to do the book with the course is only 30 euros. It's a correspondence course. That will help you to greatly increase your understanding of the book and get yourself up to the point where you can really start applying it in your life. All right, Dita is just helping us here with the links. So I would say check them out, and if you have any question for me, let me know. bad. I think we started at 7:08, didn't we, Dita? More or less. So we kind of like crammed it in 1 hour. Pretty good. All right, guys. Any questions at this point? Just feel free to pop any questions. Maybe you want to have a personal chat. Maybe you want to try Dianetics. See how it works. Maybe there's something specific that you want to handle. Maybe you want to know, can I handle that with Dianetics? I'll just wait for half a minute, and then if nothing pops up in the chat, we're going to end up for tonight. All right, guys. So that's it. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's been great having you. It was a bit of a one-way flow due to the content and the amount of things that we had to cover. I hope you liked it. I certainly did, and I hope to see you again either next Tuesday or next Wednesday. Stay tuned on Eventbrite, on Meetup, because that's where all these webinars are published. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your evening.